I was first in Prague before you were born. I was here in the summer of 1968. I got out, the tanks came in. Now I say that because Africa has had as momentous events, more momentous events even, than the Czech Republic. You've just celebrated 20 years of liberation from a form of tyranny. Africa has been through a range of earthquake events since decolonization. And I'm here to pay honor and my own respects to the name of Kapuscinski, because Kapuscinski was the journalist, the great chronicler of these earthquake events. He was an extraordinary man. He was a Polish journalist. And you must think back to the times of the communist era and how the position of a Polish journalist working in Africa and Iran. He was intrinsically a marginal figure, and yet he identified with ordinary people in extraordinary times and provided these absolutely riveting chronicles. I really recommend you to read them. They're fascinating and illuminating depictions of truly historic events. And his legacy is that, having produced these chronicles, for years and years to come, as people look back on these extraordinary times, and in particular as Africans look back on the earthquakes, the political earthquakes that created modern Africa, they'll look to him as the, I think, foremost chronicler. 40 years ago, when I was your age, a student, and when people studied development, the world was kind of divided into a 1 billion lucky people in rich countries and a 5 billion people in developing countries. And that is no longer true. Over my lifetime, the world has fundamentally changed so that a 1 billion, 5 billion, lucky billion, the rest of the world developing, is no longer characterized as what's going on. About 4 billion of the 5 billion are living in countries that are either already at middle income levels or are converging so fast that it's a miracle. So we're now in a world of a sort of 1 billion at the bottom, 1 billion at the top, and 4 billion in the middle converging. And my story is the billion at the bottom. So what can we do? Two things. We've got limited resources, and we should focus those resources down on the countries that now need it most. And then secondly, we should broaden the array of policies that we use. It's not just about our money. What we forget is that we've got many other policies that affect the development process. Now, you in the Czech Republic are in a better position to understand that than most, because you have been through that transformation out of socialism, one-party state, and economic stagnation. You've been through that transition over the last 20 years. And that's the transition that a lot of these societies have to go through. And so think, what part did the international community, particularly the European community, play in that transition? What did the European Union offer? Yes, it offered some money, but it also offered integration into trade, so it opened markets. And so trade policy, market access, is fundamental for shaping the opportunities which Africa faces. Europe has various special schemes for Africa, they're not very good in my mind. This is one area in which I think we don't compare very well with America. Both Europe and America have schemes for Africa. Europe's scheme, until very recently, was called Everything But Arms. America's scheme was called the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. And I've evaluated them both. And a go at the American scheme works, and broadly, Everything But Arms doesn't. And here's the evidence that, to my mind, one of the key things that trade policy can do for Africa is to enable Africa to diversify out of extreme dependence upon a narrow range of primary commodities. It can help Africa to break in to light manufactures, the sort of transition that Asia made. That was the fundamental transition in Asia, breaking into global markets for light manufacturers, that took Asia out of poverty. So, trade policy matters. What else did the Czech Republic benefit from, and the other countries of the former Soviet Union over the last 20 years? They benefited from rules of governance, rules of political governance, and rules of economic governance that the European community set out. In a globalized world, having a continent so close to Europe in which millions, hundreds of millions, a billion people are living without credible hope is a potential nightmare. And so both compassion and enlightened self-interest point in the same direction. We need to try and help. And we need to try and help intelligently.